Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of High Vis Low Reg. Tonight, we're going to be talking to a friend of mine that I've known for 20 years, and there are too many stories to tell in this short intro. So, without further ado, Captain Keenan O'Connor.
Here's my homie trying to be patriotic. Wanted to fight for Uncle Sam, so we dropped out of college. Looking back at his friends like, you're not gonna follow? Then you're not a real American, your heart is all hollow. He enlisted, and in a couple of months was trained. Jumped up on the plane with what Uncle pumped in his brain. Dehumanize the enemy, except you're there to set him free. That's an oxymoron, B, and that's why they're not sending me.
Keenan, brother, what's going on, man?
What's going on, man? Happy to be here.
Dude, I'm so glad that we get to do this and actually get to talk about everything that's going on. So,
sure.
Just for everybody, why don't you introduce yourself, who you are, and where you served, what you did in the Marine Corps as well.
Sure, man. Absolutely. So, I'm Keenan O'Connor. I was an officer in the air support control area of things, and I ended up having a kind of a wide array of different jobs while I was in the Marine Corps. So, worked for a comp platoon for a while. That was probably the best experience I ever had. Um, but think of like ATC out in the field. That's typically what I did. Um, yeah, that's a lot of it. I worked over in operations for a decent set of things. More of the planning side of things, lots of coordination, and then got out back in August of this past year, and I've been working in project management.
And you're a captain.
Yep, got out as a captain.
Yep. Okay. So ATC or air traffic control. How often did you actually do?
Kind of, yeah. So air support control is like the middleman between ATC and the FACs or the final controllers.
Oh.
So more of like the hub of information that comes through that provides the like either troops in contact or the air support logistics messages to the ground troops. All the information would come through the DASC, which is the Direct Air Support Control Center. So that was my little hub, and I would tell the pilots where to go, and they would begrudgingly probably not listen to me and fly wherever they want to. But we would at least pass the information along to them.
Fucking pilots, dude.
Right?
God, we hate them so much.
We know a couple of them. Yeah.
We know a couple. we know a couple of them, and they're the worst. Now, so you said you worked a lot of other jobs. How often do you actually do your actual MOS?
Dude, not a whole lot, honestly. There were a few exercises out in like Yuma or out in Lejeune that I did, acting as the DASC or liaison of the DASC. But for the far and large of what I did, I was a platoon commander for that comp platoon, and we're working on the operations side of things. So that was like I had my main MOS, but for the most part, I was working side jobs.
And how is that pretty common, or is that like where you're just
It is. So besides just doing upkeep for your own MOS, which we do like a lot of different drills and exercises and stuff like that. As far as hands-on experience, like controlling aircraft, I probably had a handful of times. I think working out in Bridgeport with range control, I did some controlling, working some CASEVACs and things like that. But overall, a lot of it, especially on the shiny side of things, is more admin work and more working with the troops there.
Okay. And then you said you were a platoon commander. How did you like that?
Dude, best experience I ever had, for sure. So there's a small section of Marines over in Cherry Point that work for Mass 1 that I had the absolute pleasure of working with. And they needed a communications platoon commander / officer and didn't have a BIC filled for them. So they were like, hey, tap on the shoulder, you're going over there. Congrats. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, doesn't matter. You're over there.
You're going.
So, yeah. It's very much a fly by the seat of your pants kind of job. But very much worth it. The guys I worked
Yeah.
with were great, and it was good to have that perspective of things too, not just like a totally air side of things
Yeah.
perspective. So they definitely made the entire experience worth it.
That's one thing I've noticed too. Talking to any platoon sergeant or any person in leadership roles, it's never like there's never a turnover binder. There's never like
There is,
somebody
it's
telling
just
you,
really badly
okay,
kept.
I say a real turnover binder. There's never a
Right.
real turnover binder. There's never a binder that says this is how you lead Marines. This is how you lead like anybody. Like this is the do's and don'ts. Nine times
It's
out
an
of ten,
experience thing, man.
exactly. You just get
Yeah,
fucking thrusted into there, and then it's like, dude, you have to fuck up 20 times to get it right the first time.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I was blessed to have some really good, staff NCOs and leadership to help me along there too, to
Hmm.
make sure that, the plans we were going with weren't just totally coming out of left field. So
Yeah,
definitely try to lean upon them and make sure that, what we were doing was in sound doctrine to what the Marines needed. So
yeah.
super, super thankful for them. Had some great staff sergeants, some great Yennies, and definitely lean on them a whole lot.
That's yeah, that's awesome, and that's always another thing too. Like even at the enlisted side, like um, even if you are that staff NCO, you still have some of those rock star sergeants, right? Or if even if you're a sergeant, you still have some of those rock star corporals that are like, I already know fuckhead one, fuckhead two, and
Sure.
schmuckatelli, so I know how to work them. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so it's always, especially in those leadership positions, I don't think a lot of people talk about it. It's a lot of leaning on those people.
Yeah,
You're
man. I mean,
technically the
it's
leader.
technically is very, very loose term for sure.
Yeah.
I would say the coordinator is a better way of putting it in a lot of ways because that true sense of leadership comes from um, it's twofold. You have the staff NCOs that are the mentors, deeply the mentors of that shop, and they lift a lot. Like that's not lost on me whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then you have the shiny side that's able to do certain things that those mentors are not able to do or enact certain policies. So together, they make a good team, or they should at
Yeah.
least. So that's a lot of it, man.
I,
But I learned a lot from those Marines, sure.
mhm.
And it's like you can't just step into that position and like automatically assume any sort of control. You're just gonna fuck everything up.
Yeah.
Um, but you have to learn who your people are in addition to actually giving a shit, actually learning
Hmm.
who they are and what their issues are, you know, and give a vested interest to actually get any sort of um, buy-in from them as well.
Yeah. That's that. No, totally. Because like if you don't see that where you actually give a shit about them, like they're gonna do what they're told and that's it. And I think that's like a weird generational shift. Especially when we have like the old heads that are coming in, it's like, oh, these kids need to know why or anything like that.
Maybe they
And
haven't been
that's
taught why.
exactly, and that's one of the
Yeah,
biggest things is because it is a generational shift. Marines, I want to say Marines, people nowadays want to know the why of what they're doing, and not understanding that you're failing yourself as a leader because if you don't tell the kids why, when it is time and appropriate, time not time sensitive and it's appropriate, you can be like, yeah, this is why. They understand more of what needs to happen, and if you give them that time, they're going to give you so much more.
absolutely, absolutely.
What was the hardest part about being that platoon commander?
Uh, Phew. I would say it was a balance between knowing when to lean on those staff NCOs, right?
Hmm.
And really put down the hammer for disciplinary actions
Yeah.
and or figure out if they were deserved or not.
Hmm.
So probably I was fairly lenient in a lot of things.
Yeah.
I took a lot of compassion into who they were as people,
Mm-hmm.
and I relied on my staff NCOs a decent bit to let me know when that was too far in the line and whenever other disciplinary actions should have been taken.
Yeah.
So there's not a paradox, but a balance when it comes to loving your troops, loving your Marines, right? And disciplining just like a father does, right, to their own
Mm-hmm.
kids. Like letting them get away with certain shit is not in the best interest of their own growth.
Yeah.
And that can be a hard line to learn when you're first starting out.
Oh yeah, for
And
sure.
you don't want to necessarily overstep because you've seen the fallout of other officers wanting to just be the man, right? Um, and so it's a delicate line to tread and try not to absolutely fuck up a Marine's career while
Mm-hmm.
still giving the firmness of discipline, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's not fun in any stretch of the word, and
Yeah.
I never took any sort of pleasure in that whatsoever. Um, but it's a fine line of knowing that this development is good for them and good for their coworkers as well, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say the development of the Marines in a lot of ways,
Mm-hmm.
put it that way, is probably the hardest part of it.
Yeah.
And learning that, you know, they're still human too, so that balance of almost being like a dad of like, I want to see you do great things. I want to see you absolutely kill it out there, but
Yeah.
dude, you are fucking up.
Yeah.
And how do I get that through your skull right now in a way that you understand it?
Well, and it's hard too because 9 times out of 10, when you have those kind of epiphanies of like, oh, I should have done X, Y, and
Hmm.
Z or whatever, it's hindsight.
Sure,
It's after unfortunately something bigger
sure.
happened. You know what I mean?
And
Or at least in
yeah,
my situation, I've seen that a lot where it was like I should have
I
been
would
more hard.
I
But
would almost counter it too with the the vision. So like on the shiny side, that there is a vision, right, as to what command wants to pass down and what we want to instill to the troops, the Marines, etc., going
mhm,
forward. And so getting buy-in for that vision can be difficult, um, especially in like peacetime Marine Corps.
yeah,
Like that's even more difficult, I would say. Like, excuse me, getting the Marines focused into the idea of I know things are like relaxed right now,
yeah,
but we are training for this thing to happen, and I
hmm,
need you in the mindset of this happening. So even though you may be far away from that certain thing, I need you to get in the game mentally every day
hmm,
in a place that's still peacetime Marine Corps or peacetime Army, peacetime, etc. Like that is difficult to train your Marines, train your soldiers, um, to have that continued buy-in without getting them relaxed necessarily. Like, oh, it's a
yeah,
Tuesday, you know, or like it's a Friday, we're gonna probably get off early and, you know, go play frisbee for our PT
yeah.
versus, hey, China's fucking looking at you right now and they want your lunch.
Hmm.
So maybe get on top of your craft and be the best that you can be, so you can send up that 9 line when the time comes.
That was I yeah, I totally agree with that because especially like you said at this peacetime Marine Corps, it's hard to give that buy-in to younger Marines who maybe I mean honestly nowadays weren't around for 9/11, right? Um and some of them don't even like even if they were military brats, probably some of them don't even remember their parents going to Iraq, to Afghanistan, or like directly involved with some of these conflicts. And short of taking them on a commercial airline and just dropping them in the middle of Iraq or fucking Afghanistan, it's hard to kind of like convey that, yeah, this is serious. Like what what you're doing actually can make a difference
Right. Right.
of life or death, and it doesn't seem like it at the time, and it's hard to convey that. I remember when I was teaching corporal's course, we had our guest speaker was Sergeant Major Bamba. Oh my god, fucking one of the most motivational, like legitimately got me a moto boner, and I damn near re-enlisted after his speech. But he was talking about that, and about like how it's hard having that priority with war fighting, and then and just kind of conveying that as well. How did you convey that, and what were some of do you remember any of the techniques that you used to kind of like help that buy-in, to kind of give them a buy-in, not necessarily maybe it wasn't directly with war, wasn't directly with China,
Sure.
Russia, or whatever like that, was
Sure.
something else?
Yeah. So when I was in Design 2030 was just coming out, and I tried my best to give the relevancy as to why that was important to those Marines, especially with such a shift in the construct of our Corps. You know,
Yeah.
it's easy to see a piece of legislation or an article come out from the commandant, et cetera, that says like, hey, we're going to do these things, and just be like, oh yeah, well you'll be out in 2 years anyway, and everything's going to change back.
Yep.
But so one of the things that I did is I printed that out and I put it on our bulletin board in addition to having talks with our Marines throughout the weeks as to why this is important, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
Lots of TDGs. If I could manage it to make sure that like, hey,
TDG. Sorry,
there's
can you explain?
yeah,
Can you explain
sure.
TDG?
So it's a tactical decision game. So
Okay.
in our side of things, I had a really good set of platoon sergeants
Mm-hmm.
throughout the time I was there, and I gave them the task of like, hey, make some tactical decision games for the shop to get their teeth into, so that they could actually start looking at like, hey, we have a situation with an enemy in addition to our own forces from past history. How would you employ your own resources in this instance?
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I did a lot. In addition to just talking with them,
Yeah.
honestly, man, like that was a lot of it, is making sure that they knew that I was invested in their own career and
Yeah.
letting them know, like, hey, you may not see it right now, and you might be at, this station right now that is very far away from any sort of conflict, but with your current MOS, that could change at any certain time.
Oh yeah.
And it's incumbent on you as a Marine and as a radio operator to do your job to the best of your ability,
Mm-hmm.
not just for yourself, but for others. And here's how the others fit into your piece of the pie. So
Yeah.
just letting them know the gravity of other people rely on
Mm-hmm.
you for this thing,
Yeah. Oh
and
yeah.
giving them the kind of breadth of who those other people are.
Mm-hmm.
Once you start putting a face to it, or pushing them out on exercises to work with different forces,
Mm-hmm.
that starts connecting a lot better.
Yeah.
You know,
I totally agree. Like, and it sounds stupid talking to Marines. A lot of people are going to roll their eyes. They're like, "Oh, a staff NCO and officer is coming down to talk to us," because I mean, not in the same boat, but we're both kind of in the same. We were both in the same echelon. You know what I mean?
sure,
Like, the staff NCOs and officers are the evil, especially with the Marine Corps. You know what I mean?
of
They're the
course, but you
bad
don't need to be a
guys.
dick about it, right?
Exactly. You don't need to. But when I remember a very specific time, I watched a kind of debriefing when a scout sniper or a recon guy, I can't remember who it was, but I think it was a scout sniper who was Overwatch when the bomb in Kabul went off, and
Damn,
they had the POI, and so he was debriefing all of Congress. He was talking about how he had the person of interest that fit the description of what they've been told to watch out for, and he basically broke it down. And I would recommend everybody go watch that, because it's a very impactful debrief about how he talked when he talked to Congress. And I don't want to undercut it at all, but he basically said that he is 90% sure, or very inclined to be sure, that he saw that person who detonated. That PBID, person born IED, and I think it was a person born ID.
Hmm.
And he asked the lieutenant colonel, he's like, "Can I take the shot?" And the lieutenant colonel basically is like, "I don't have authorization to make that." And so I showed him that 45-minute, I was like 30 or 45-minute video. Like I stopped work. I was like, "Everybody bring it in." We got the TV out. I showed him that video, and then I just had them talk about it. And I played devil's advocate for everything they said. And like I only said like two sentences, and they just kept going back and forth about it. But you could tell that they
Absolutely.
were like seriously had that buy-in, and kind of understood like a little bit more, and kind of like you said, tactical. What was the TDG tactical
Yeah, tactical decision games. So
tact?
something
Yeah,
taken from history, an instance that was taken from a real life like scenario. A lot of them are from
yeah,
Vietnam,
hmm,
right? And applied to questions as to like, hey, here's a situation, here's a scenario.
yeah,
You have 3 minutes. What are you
hmm,
doing?
yeah,
And then discuss the pros and cons as to why you would do that, and like contrast with what actually happened.
yeah. I always liked war gaming, because TDG
Yeah,
and war
same
gaming
thing.
are the same thing.
Same
Same
thing.
thing. Um, it's the equivalent of back backseat gaming or backseat driving. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, or Monday night quarterbacking. But when you do that to them, they imagine themselves in that position, and they
that's the
kind of
hope. Yeah,
that's the hope. That's the hope. For sure. Um, but yeah, no, I totally get that, and it's a cool to see the kids, the Marines, click, and then they start rolling with that. But
yeah.
yeah, no, I totally get that. That buy-in is super hard to
And
do.
I was blessed to have a small shop, right? So I probably had 15 to 20 people total.
Hmm.
And that was a small enough number to where I had the benefit of being able to talk with everyone
Yeah.
and figure out roughly how I could make the bigger purpose, the bigger mission, right,
Hmm.
applicable to every individual, or at
Yeah.
least figure out what they wanted to do and how that fits within the puzzle.
Yeah, because then you measure their response, and then you're like, okay, they responded in
Yeah,
this way or this way or this way, and then you kind of are like, now I can mold how I talk to them or put it in their terms that they
sure.
understand.
And
Um,
for some of them, the right course of action was them getting out, and which my energy was shifted into, okay, cool. How do we make you the best civilian that we can? How do we set you up for success? How do we,
abs-
make sure that your transition into the civilian world is as seamless and as good as possible? Because our mission is to, make Marines and return good citizens back to the working force in a lot of ways.
exactly. Yeah, like the regardless, everybody's gonna take off that the stupid little PJs, right?
Yep.
And they're
Yep.
gonna have to enter the human world at some point, and developing that, I think it's more important than developing good Marines, because if you develop good human beings, they're eventually going to be good Marines. You know what I mean?
It's part of the process, man.
Yeah,
Or that's the hope, at least.
exactly. So speaking of getting out, right? You obviously got out, right?
I did.
How long ago did you get? Yeah, yeah. They don't
Yeah.
they don't let
Um,
ATC, or not ATC. They don't let dude.
it's
What
all
once
good.
again? What's the MOS? Exact MOS.
Air support control officer.
They don't let air support control officers grow beards like that.
Unfortunately, not. No.
Oh, okay. Well,
Um,
but you've gotten out, right?
yep.
Since you've gotten out, how did any of the Marine Corps' experiences, the things you've learned, did that directly translate into help, like assisting you getting into a job, or did you transition into something that was similar to your MOS? How did
It
that
did.
transition go?
It did. So I was very blessed. I had a good command that they appreciated the work that I did with them and for them. And as a reaction to that, I believe that they helped me get the skill bridge that I did, which was to get a project management professional certification, which is one of the highest that you can kind of attain as far as project management goes, and I was able to transfer a lot of the knowledge that I had from the planning side of things and exercises and working on different plans throughout the operations S3 portion of things over to project
Hmm.
management. So that was immensely helpful. Upon immediately getting out, a little bit rough, sure. It's always a
Yeah.
little bit rough for most people.
Hmm.
Um, excuse me, but I would say there definitely were some skills that transferred over. Most of those being personnel and people skills. So
Hmm.
a lot of those kind of fit into the category of putting out fires, so to speak, right? So what I
Yeah.
currently do in project management deals very heavily on coordination with people. It deals very heavily in putting out those personnel fires and dealing a lot more with the communication side of things, right? So
Hmm.
can we communicate as a team? Can we come together as a team? If there's issues within that, can we, you know, break those down so they're no longer conflicts? That way we can actually
Yeah.
focus on the actual problem.
Yeah.
And those are some skills that I learned throughout the Marine Corps for sure.
Hmm.
They're uncomfortable for sure to go
Yeah.
through,
Hmm.
but they're skills that I learned nonetheless of if there's conflict, how can we resolve this
Yeah.
in a way that we can focus on what's actually important, and can we get back on topic to continue getting progress done towards our common goal. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'd say
No,
that there's
that's.
definitely some skills that transfer over.
Hmm.
And for anyone that is getting out right now, uh, there's resources. There are
Hmm.
absolutely resources out there for you to look into, but look into your soft skills, not just your hard skills, because being a CBRN expert is not always going to transfer over into the civilian world. Just a heads up.
Yeah.
But being able to teach that CBRN course is probably going to transfer pretty decently.
Oh yeah. I was when I was doing my skill bridge, I was talking to a couple of guys that the chief instructor for my machining course that I went through, my machining skill bridge that I went through, and then another gentleman who was going through the course. However, he's been in the workforce for like 10, 12 years. And so I was telling them, I was like, hey, like I've got these certifications about how I can teach people to teach people.
Hmm.
Does that actually translate? Because like in the Marine Corps, it's just kind of like oh, you give a calendar year class, whatever.
Sure,
We
sure.
don't care about that. But in the civilian side, they're like, dude, that actually speaks volume because you know how to get up in front of people, speak confidently, talk to people, relate to people, and all those other things, those soft skills almost become really hard skills because what other like because we're both you're 27, I'm 27, right? Like we're both younger men, but the amount of conflict and unique scenarios we've had to deal with from the wide variety of people coming from different backgrounds and cultures and stuff like that, nobody's getting that in fucking Georgia. You know what I mean? No, nobody's getting that from where I'm living right now. Nobody's getting that from
Yeah.
Tennessee. To be able to deal with that, especially at the young age that we are. And so, though, like you said, those soft skills, if you relay that to an employer, I feel like that definitely goes a long way.
And there's a balance there too, man, for sure. You got to back it up, right? With some experience, some information. You can't just say I have soft skills, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, um, to be able to show experience is great. I would say for anyone getting out right now, something that would definitely help you is figure out what you actually want to do. There's a lot of things out there that you may not understand the job title in its entirety.
Hmm.
So one thing you can do is, you know, LinkedIn Premium is free for a year for those getting out. So take advantage of that.
Do I even
Look
know
into
that?
those job, yep, look into those job positions. Find people that work in the industries and or the jobs that you're looking for, and reach out to them. Ask for an informational interview. with them to see, what their job's like, what their life's like, etc., and start making connections that way to kind of not only hone in what you want to do, but
Hmm.
make connections so that if something pops up, maybe you'll be on their mind. And if you've made a good impression with them, right, then you can start shifting away from just the Marine Corps or Army, Navy, Air Force, etc. way of doing things, start translating things into more corporate or whatever you want to do, etc.
Yeah.
And if there's a job opening, they might think of you and ask you
Hmm.
for an application for a certain position, and you might be
Hmm.
shooting for that. So definitely do that. Start making some connections. It doesn't hurt. And oftentimes, a lot of the people that are accepting of those informational interviews, they do it because if you get hired, they get a bonus. So just saying, there's nothing to lose there from just reaching out and asking questions. People are usually more than happy to give you 15 or 20 minutes of their time.
Yeah. No, for sure. No, that definitely makes sense. I'm gonna have to look in the fucking LinkedIn Premium now.
There you go.
I didn't know it was a thing. See, look, I'm
It's a
learning
thing.
shit. Well, I know it's a thing. I just didn't know if it was free for a year. I like free.
Free's great, man. Free's great.
Free is great. You and I have kind of talked about this, and it's interesting now that once Marines get out, and you and I have had this conversation before, where we basically have, I'm gonna say, like, outlined it or labeled it as Marines specifically, because that's our experience. But I think I've seen it in a couple of other branches. When they get out, when we've experienced um, an emotional stunt of what their rank was, we see that
Yeah.
um, once they get out, as say a corporal, a lance corporal, staff sergeant, gunnery sergeant, whatever rank they get out as, they kind of emotionally stunt there, um, to where they feel like that's what they are. You know, can you expound on like what
Yeah.
your
So
experience is on that?
just for audience sake, I want you to think of the typical bro vet that got out, right? He's got his Oakleys on, right? Operator beard, maybe a little bit heavier than he should be. Um, but you look at that individual and you're like, okay, I'd be willing to bet a paycheck that you're either, you know, E3, E4, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I see the same thing on the shiny side as well. Like you see some dude um, in like khaki cutoff shorts, right, and boat shoes and
And
a
the
button
polo.
down, yeah, polo.
Yep.
Okay, you definitely got like sure you're a little bit harder to see because that kind of fits within some other norms, but like
Yeah.
you probably got out as a first lieutenant.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay. Um, or you see the guys with like Jinko shorts or Jinko
Mm-hmm.
jeans, right? And you're like, okay, so yeah, sure, you joined back in like 99, 01. Got it. Yep. And it's interesting to see that people dress how they dress on leave and liberty and out in public, at least while they're in, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the same style and time frame that they thought was appropriate when they first joined the Marine Corps or the
Mm-hmm.
service in general, right? You can almost nail it and be like, oh, you joined in the early 2000s. You joined in like the teens. Like you can see it.
Dude,
It's that visceral, right?
yeah.
Um,
Before I met Britt,
yeah.
I was still wearing Merrill hiking shoes,
Yep.
jeans, and Goodwill shirts. So yeah,
Yep.
totally understand
Yep.
that.
But it shifts to whenever you get out and you look around and you realize, okay, so you meet a dude that like was in the army. Cool. Based on your interactions, you can almost kind of vet on what rank that they got out based upon what responsibility level that they were given.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it's almost like that part of our brains doesn't stop, or it stops developing in some ways. I'm not going to say that it does, right? Sure,
Yeah.
that would be ludicrous, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe, just maybe, we
Mm-hmm.
hold on to the idea that our time in the service was the highlight of our lives in such a way,
Yeah.
and the highest point of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be very easy to see where someone, given a certain level of responsibility in the service with a means of importance, right? A feeling of importance and um, purpose, right? In a lot of
Mm-hmm.
ways, within a certain level,
Yeah.
when they get out, that's the highest high they've ever felt.
Mm-hmm.
So they meet that level and they don't surpass that because they think that that's still the highest point. That's still the precipice to them
Yeah.
because their service is the highest form of
What they'll
sacrifice that they've
accomplish.
given. Yeah,
Yeah,
or
it's
what
the
they'll become.
highest form of
Yeah.
what they'll accomplish in their
Yep.
life. And as soon as you do that, you're stunting yourself as a human
In a
being.
way, yeah.
You know what I mean? We actually was talking about this too. If you're not growing, you're dying. And I said that before in a
Yeah.
podcast, in one of the previous episodes. And I think it's true because it doesn't make sense. We had talked about it just a couple of seconds ago, where like we talked about before. If you just get out and you maintain that, like who you are and everything like that, you're not growing, you're not advancing, and everything like that. It's you're not returning as a better citizen. You
Sure.
know what I mean? The Marine Corps or the military failed you in that aspect because you're not developing after that. So it's interesting to see that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that there's definitely a blocker there when it comes to our ability to move on or at least see other positions, other jobs, and our own future as being just as important to the point where we're able to grow from that.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that needs to change as far as the veteran community goes. By and large, I'm not saying it's wrong by any means to be, just absolutely meta with the boys. That's great. I
Hmm.
love it. I absolutely love it. But don't stay in a place where you're stunting yourself from growing because you still want to like just live out the glory years.
Yeah. And I think, and it was funny. So, when we had Sergeant Major Bomba come by and talk to us, talk to the corporals. I'm sitting in the back, just fucking soaking it in, right? And one of the Marines asked that is like, hey, like, how do you? How, I joined to deploy. I joined to do this. I joined X, Y, and Z. He goes, what do I do now for motivation? It kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, is get that buy-in. And he said to change your goalpost, basically, right?
Hmm.
He didn't use those exact words, but change your goal. What you're looking for from the Marine Corps should shift. You know what I mean? Especially with the times, with peacetime Marine Corps, the MOS that you chose wasn't what you wanted, etc. Right? There's so many reasons why your expectations aren't met when you join, because the commercials don't do the best of
Yeah, I
conveying
mean,
what
we're
it
not
is.
just out here fighting dragons all the time.
Yeah, that's, oh man, if I could fight a dragon. Damn, that's a callback. No, but yeah, like he said, you've got to shift your goalposts. You've got to shift your purpose, your God given purpose, or whatever.
Yep.
If you're religious, regardless, your God given purpose. And if you're not shifting that and utilizing that once you get out, and you're not shifting that, like it needs to be another shift once you get out, and maybe not another shift, but just how you implement that God given purpose as a civilian. And it's super important to understand and be able to shift that focus over to something else,
Yep.
or something similar. Like I think that's another important thing as well.
Yeah, and that's something that so many veterans don't understand. That's why we get lost and get into dark places is because of a lack of purpose, right?
Yeah.
Um, Transferring your skills, transferring who you are, and realizing that whenever you leave whatever organization you're with, be it XYZ branch, right?
Hmm.
I don't care if you went in thinking this is the thing that you were made for or not. It may not be entirely. And
Yeah.
regardless, we get out at some point in time. So don't get too attached to the identity of, you know, this branch is who I am. It's not who you
Hmm.
are, it's a part of who you are.
Yeah.
And whenever you get out, regardless of when that is, I don't care if you did 4 and got out like I did, or like did 25, 30 and got out.
Hmm.
It's part of you, but your purpose changes, right? And or adapts to the circumstances. And it's important to see that because a lot of us need that purpose, right? And we think that
Yes.
it's the organization, and it's not the organization necessarily as it is the drive that you have
Hmm.
that's attached to it. So in my case, like I want to help people. I want to help
Yeah.
people in most any capacity that I can. So the purpose in who I am is not the Marine Corps. It's a part of it, but whenever I got out, realizing that I can still help people in other capacities too, that fulfills that bubble for you, so you don't feel necessarily just absolutely lost.
It's
You know,
just a different avenue of approach. Like you're
sure,
you helping somebody, you're taking I-8. And
yeah,
if you take I-10, guess where? You're probably going still the same fucking place. You're just
yeah,
taking a different route for it.
yep.
And so
The
like
circumstances are different though. You got to understand
exactly.
that, and you got
Yep.
to find the resources, the organizations that still serve that central purpose for you to
Hmm.
help others or to be the best part of society that you can.
Switching topics, right?
Sure.
You obviously got out, right? um, but when you got out, that was around about the time when the vaccine mandates were rolling out.
Yep.
And I totally commend you for um, what you did, sticking to your beliefs, sticking to more, like we talked about, your beliefs and your avenue, I guess, of approaching things. You stuck to more who you were and less of who the Marine Corps made you.
Sure.
Um, when the vaccines roll out, you denied it.
I did. Yep.
Okay.
So there's some backstory around that too. Uh, COVID was a weird time for all of us, sure. And I don't fault anyone that took it for their own beliefs or took it because they were scared or just took it because, they felt like they needed to support their families. All of those are valid reasons to take it based on your own positions. And just want to preface this that I don't think anyone's wrong for doing any of those things necessarily. For my own personal beliefs, I took an oath to the Constitution whenever I commissioned to uphold and defend the Constitution, and I did not see the COVID mandate as a constitutional order that fulfilled that. So, in the lieu of that, I felt that that was something that I should not agree with.
Hmm.
Um, for own personal reasons, I didn't think that it was healthy for myself or my family. And I was worried for the impacts and implications it would have on future family, right, too.
Hmm.
So, for all those things and not agreeing with the way that things were being done overall, I decided not to take it. Um, I want to also kind of preface that with I had a fantastic command that we saw very clearly eye to eye that they needed to uphold the, you know, orders that they were given that they
Mm-hmm.
believed were constitutional, which I
Mm-hmm.
disagreed with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there would be a time where like push comes to shove, and they would need to serve me papers. We had
Yeah.
that open conversation, and I absolutely respect them for following on what they believe is right.
Mm-hmm.
So no ill will there. But it
And
was
I think
my yeah, go ahead.
And I think that's the beautiful thing about the military too is you get that conglomeration or that just melting pot of these different beliefs, regardless of whether you agree with them or not. You get to have that conversation and that perspective of other people.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
And so for them to respect your perspective, for them to say, "Hey, I respect your perspective. However, I still need to do my duty, and
yep,
you still need to do your what you thought your duty was, and what your duty was, not what you thought, what you felt was your duty as well." Um, to do X, Y, and Z, or refuse to do X.
yeah.
And I think that's a great thing to see, and for them to actually consider that and say like, yeah, like that was we respected that point of view. I think that's really
And
cool to see.
there's a very fine line that goes with that, Connor, to where I still had a platoon and I did not feel like um, it wasn't right for me to advertise any of that information to my Marines because I didn't want to influence them one way or the other on taking the shot or not. So many of them didn't realize that I was almost going to get kicked out, like until I was almost going to get kicked out.
Hmm.
They thought I just took it, but it wasn't my place to influence their decisions on that. It was my
And
place to show them that, hey, here's the order that's been given down. You have options. You can do X, Y, and Z if you prefer. Um, so this is not necessarily forced. There's consequences to any of your actions, but
yeah,
these are the things that are being passed. But it wasn't my place to convince them that, hey, you should probably rebel against the command because of these things that aren't just. That wasn't something that ever happened or entered my mind like that. That wasn't
and
my position to give.
and that's a burden of leadership. One of the burden of leadership, where you have to take yourself out of that, and especially an institute like the Marine Corps where we are so hell-bent, we are so focused on orders,
Sure.
standards, and everything like that. You need to say, this is what the Marine Corps is telling you. And 9 times out of 10, and I would say, like, it depends on what kind of leader you are or what level of leader you are. You've got to separate yourself from your personal opinion. You've got to
Yeah.
say, this is what the Marine Corps is saying. This is, and then not even bring up what you're saying. And
Right.
so
Yep.
it's hard to do that. And again, it's a huge burden because you can't just go around saying, I don't think the Marine Corps should, not have a shave, just to have a stupid, whatever like that. But you can't go around, just nobody shave when they, no, everybody, I better see a fucking 5 o'clock shadow. You can't be start doing that just because
I
you believe
mean,
that should be beards.
am I opposed to it? Absolutely not. Like, let's go.
Obviously,
We
yeah,
have coalition forces
obviously,
doing the same thing. Let's just join our brothers over there. It's fine.
obviously, but you can't be like, hey, Marines, you better show up with a fucking beard tomorrow. You know what I mean? Or 5 o'clock shadow.
Yeah, some first
You can't
sergeant who's
put
not
that.
able to grow a mustache is going to get real butthurt. I can guarantee you. Like, hey, first
Yeah,
sergeant, you're out of regs. Just saying.
yeah. The hot sauce incident.
Oh God, yeah, that's good.
So the hot
Um,
sauce incident.
let's put it this way. You can only really know who your true friends are when you haze each other, and that's not incentive to anyone listening to go out and haze each other. And I'm not condoning that. But maybe, just maybe, you find out who your true friends are when you endure a certain level of visceral pain together, which I would equate to the same idea of going through training together. You,
I would. I'm
yeah,
I'm gonna say this as a flat black.
yeah,
Haze your friends. It's good for you.
uh, yeah,
No, but go ahead. The hot sauce incident. Let's hear it from the start. So
There we go.
what I've heard, right? And I
Sure.
think I don't even remember where I was. I think I
Yeah,
was
for someone who was not there
when
in the first place,
I
that
wasn't
did not
here.
endure the
I
same visceral
didn't.
pain.
I didn't.
Who
I
says
think I
we're
was in
even friends
Arizona.
right now? You know, I don't think I know you at that level, man. Yeah.
I
Um, Let me
I was in
summate this real
Arizona.
quick.
Yeah.
Um, so our other friend, as well, that I'm sure will eventually at some point be asked the same question, regarding hot sauce. We were hanging out and bored as shit, and um, we had this gift of 5 million Scoville unit hot sauce that he had in his cupboard, which is this type of object that you pose dares with back and
Yeah.
forth. That's what you do,
Yeah.
right?
Of course.
And at the time, I don't know, I think we were probably what, 16, 17, something like that.
Young. Yeah.
Some dumb young age. Um, it's when you dare each other to do dumb shit,
Mm-hmm.
such as putting hot sauce in regions that never deserve to have hot sauce in order to show a face of courage, right? We'll say that, or uh, prove to your friends that they're a bitch. That's the biggest portion of it. So things commenced and happened. Hot sauce was placed in areas, personally, not via other units. But yeah, no, that was probably the worst pain I've felt in a long time. And I don't care how many showers you take, it never really goes away. But
Oh
yeah, no, I still had a kid, so we're fine.
man. So to recap.
Yeah, hot sauce on balls, Bernie,
Yeah.
Bernie, Bernie. Not a good time. Other best friend took up one of the showers because he's a bitch and didn't do it. Um, and that's about the size of it, man. Yeah,
So,
you do dumb shit when you're in high school.
oh yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like I've done dumb shit in the Marine Corps too.
Oh, absolutely.
Where I, somebody was like, "You won't do that, pussy," and then they uttered the sentence, "No balls," and
Oh, yeah. No, that
yeah,
is the sentence. That's
that
the
is,
sentence of ride or die. Let's go.
dude. I would do terrible, utterly unspeakable things if somebody said no balls to me.
Oh, absolutely. It's a hold my beer moment for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And everyone knows that. Everyone does. You know,
Yeah.
it's a,
No.
I bet you won't, you know, I don't know, throw out some mattresses and take a dive from third deck. It happens. Okay. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But when the
Yeah. I
boys
mean,
say no balls, you do it.
my favorite. It wasn't no balls, but it was mostly like we would place bets for each other. We're in the northern island of Japan, of Mami Island,
Hmm.
and we were doing stuff with the Japanese Ground Self Defense Force, for Keen Sword 23. And one kid, one of my Marines, right? I'm a whole ass staff sergeant at this point. We got a
Whole
staff
ass staff
sergeant. We got a
sergeant. Yep.
whole ass staff sergeant, right?
Whole
Well,
ass.
fuck it. I'm a child still. And and so we had me, a sergeant, two corporals, and a lance corporal. Our only lance corporal wouldn't stop saying the word cap. No cap, like that's cap, whatever.
Oh,
We're like,
that's
hey,
rough.
if you go an entire week without saying cap, I can't remember what we offered him because obviously he fucking lost, right? But whatever we offered him, we would do. And they said if he lost and said cap within a week, he had to eat all of his meals with his hands. No meals using any sort of utensils.
I'm not seeing this as a loss so far. I think he's still winning.
So he would we
Is it really the field unless you've hit that point?
I apparently not. This is the best
Like
part.
this.
And so he would he would he obviously lost like day fucking 2.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
and
No
so
cap,
he
for
would
real,
go
for real.
for real, no, on God,
Yeah,
bussin' dead
yeah,
ass me.
bussin'.
Um, he would go through the chow hall line where they'd give us hot chow, and he would like point to something and be like, "I want that," and then stop halfway and be like, "Oh, I have to eat this without fucking utensils," and then go, "Never mind, I'll have this."
I hope it was Jello. I really
Oh,
do.
dude, it was one time it was like chili.
But you know why we do that? You know why we do all this dumb shit like that?
Why do we do? Educate me.
It's let me just do a little educating real quick. Um, we do it for trust. So
Yes.
you have your boys with you, right? But there's no adversity and there's no trust in lack of adversity, right? Um, so trust is born a lot of times out of that shared struggle. That's why,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you have so many DIs that make a team of people out of a shared struggle at OCS and or TBS or boot camp or whatever school that you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shared struggle, and that's why you get closer to people. Some people call it
Yeah.
trauma bonding. That's neither here nor there. It's fun,
Yeah.
but it's out of a place of I want to make sure that you're with me on this. I want to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
you're someone that I can trust
Mm-hmm.
given a bad decision, and we're both going to go through this together.
Yeah. No,
You know?
absolutely. Wildest story that you have in the Marine Corps. Like when somebody asks us like, "Oh, hey, I was in the Marine Corps, this and that." Your go-to story about being in the Marine Corps. Like this is the crazy shit that happened.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I think it's going to have to be the airlift that we did. So there was a proof of concept that we were doing out in Yuma um, during an exercise where we would tear down our unit, pack everything up, convoy over to the airstrip. Red Patchers would load us all up into C-53s, right, and sling load all the Humvees and gear underneath. Birds would take off, go back to the airstrip,
Mm-hmm.
and set back down, disconnect the equipment, the Humvees, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Land with us, we'd offload, and then we would reset up the entire unit that we were a part of, right?
Yeah.
So things are going well. Convoy goes well. We're all packed up. Convoy's over there, right? We get to the Mako gate where we're all stationed. We're sitting. The red patchers, the guys who are in logistics, are sling loading and making sure that the C-53s, these huge Super Stallion helicopters that are like the size of a house, right,
Mm.
are loaded up with the the equipment, right? They've got these lines that are attached to the Humvees and all that stuff. All that's getting prepped. We get loaded onto the birds. We get onto the 53s. They pick up the red patchers, sling load, and make sure everything's good with the Humvees underneath of these C-53s, and then we fly back to our original location, unpack,
Mm-hmm.
etc. Well, I think there was about 7 birds in total, and I'm on bird 2 or 3, I want to say. So
Mm-hmm.
we finally go back, we touch down, Humvees are dropped off, sling loads are unloaded, etc. We get let off, get my guys to the sideline, and I'm looking. I can see the birds behind me have taken off and got, you know, a trailer here, a Humvee here that just let off. Cool. The 53 is going away. And I'm looking over and I see the oncoming 53s coming down too, right? Like, okay, cool. We got 7 birds total. That one's coming in. Yep. Humvees underneath them. Got it. Cool. Humvees underneath them. Got it. Cool. There's a bird over here. He's coming in, and there should be a Humvee underneath that CH-53, and there's not a Humvee underneath that CH-53. And there's some days where you just have to sit back and laugh. Like there's nothing you can do. And apparently that Humvee had gotten dropped from about 500 feet AGL through one means or another, accident of some sort. I'm not sure who was responsible for it, but just got fucking dropped right into some farmer's field. And absolute carnage, like not salvageable, just a pile of twisted metal, just done.
Oh my god.
But everyone's fine, everyone's good. But just a weird point of realization of, okay, we're good, got my stuff, got my people, cool, we're off the line, got it, good, good. Wait, where? Where's your pal?
One of these things is not like the other.
Yep, exactly. And there's some accidents that happen where I don't care what rank you are, like things are going to happen. Someone's going to need to answer for those things, and that
Yeah.
conversation's never pleasant. But at the same
No.
time, there's very few things that you can plan that deep into contingency for. Like there's always going to
No.
be some outside factor that encroaches upon your plan that
Mm-hmm.
you can't plan for. I don't care how detailed it is.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You said that the contingency thing
Yep.
where you have to answer for somebody. It's actually on this this plaque that I have. It's a Pelican case, and long story short, we had this experimental 3D printing lab, and it needed obviously cables to connect it to the technically to a from the generator to a breaker or a breaker, some sort of output device where it can
Mm-hmm.
channel towards, but basically acted as a huge breaker, then channel it to the experimental 3D printing lab. And I am like my Marines are unpacking everything. We're setting up in the Philippines. So this is like the third time that we've gone out into an austere, different environment in
Sure.
a different island or a different country or whatever. So we should have this down packed. My corporal fucking runs up to me and he goes, Staff Sergeant, we don't have the cables to the generator. And I'm like, go fucking look again. And he goes, all right, Staff Sergeant, runs away. Goes fucking looking for the cables again. 10 minutes later, I'm already flipping out because this is like a big fucking deal. And he goes, nope, it's still not there. And I'm like, fuck. And all that to be said, I basically had to stand up and answer the man why we left the cables.
Been there.
And my after action report was well, there's a lot of other things. I tried to leave a blistering after action report calling out some chief warrant officers and whatever, but that didn't ever panned out. They told me to redact that or correct it, and I was like, man, it's yeah. Anyway, but I still had to answer the man. It's a very uncomfortable conversation to have.
The fun part and all that, and I learned through something similar too, is that they don't actually care whose fault it was. They just want to make sure that you are taking ownership for the responsibility of those underneath you too.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely did.
Absolutely.
I was the staff sergeant that left the cables. Trust me,
Yep.
that was well known across the
Yep.
entire fucking battalion.
Yep. I had a Mark Vic, which is a communication suite on a Humvee that had a selective interchange going to an operation overseas, and through one way or another, there was a miscommunication for my Marines to switch certain amplifier and or piece of gear to a different truck, and that wasn't found until after they were already on a vessel to that country.
To to, cl-
And I had
to
to,
to
yeah, go ahead.
clarify, selective interchange is basically taking a piece from
Yep.
another another piece of
So
equipment, whatever it
I have
is.
two pieces of gear. A part of
Hmm.
this gear is going to go on a part of this gear to make this one working entirely.
Okay. Yep. Just want to
Um,
clarify
that the CEO has to sign off on to do.
that. Yes.
And the wrong pieces of gear were switched over. And on a boat, unverified, to a different country,
Oh no.
without ability to be checked out while on the vessel.
Hmm.
So that was a very uncomfortable conversation I had to have with a lieutenant colonel I highly respected and still do, um, as to whose fault it was. It was mine,
Yep.
and why that happened in the first place, and if we could verify and what they were. Turns out the way it happened, the piece of gear was still fine. It was still
Hmm.
operable, good to use, but still verification of that gear was, yeah, that was not a pleasant experience.
Yeah. No, making sure, like, especially with serialized gear, if anybody's never been in planning of any operation or anything like that, to make sure that your CMR or your
Hmm.
commanding officer CMR, whoever CMR is going in. It's basically CMR is the list of serialized gear you're taking.
Your,
If
yeah,
you're not, if
certified
that's not,
Miranda receipt, something like that.
yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. That's just
Yeah,
fucking words.
it's
The
just
the
words, man.
the the list of serialized gear that you're taking, if that's not right, you've got hell to pay.
Yeah,
It's bad bad.
yeah, that was a fun conversation, and I started off that conversation trying to show the holes as far as like how we got to the situation that we're in.
Yeah.
And I quickly realized that the only she was a great leader, and a
Mhm.
great officer that I was very grateful to have.
Mhm.
Um, I very quickly realized that she did not give two flying fucks about how we were got to the situation we were at, and only cared about my ability to take ownership for
Mhm.
where the situation was.
Yeah.
And that lesson taught me more than like the other 3 years I had or 2 years I had at that point in time in the Marine
Mhm.
Corps. Like that alone taught me so much, and
Mhm.
I was very fortunate to have that experience, be it an uncomfortable one by far.
Well, those uncomfortable experiences always stick with you. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's how you learn.
They, yeah, like when you have that, and we talked about this before, unhealthy dosage of trials and tribulations, you tend to remember those, and that tends to mold you more into
For sure.
a better human being and a better Marine.
Yep.
So it definitely it sucks going through it for sure. But whenever you come out on the other end, you're like, okay, well, I learned not to do that again, or I learned now to do this instead. So
Right. Right.
yeah. Well, Keenan, dude, it's been a pleasure. I love you, man. And thank you for coming on High Vis Low Reg, and I really appreciate you talking about your experience and your unique outlook on how everything was going.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on. And dude, love you too. I'm excited for your show, man. It's gonna be great. And yeah, just more than happy to be here with my limited experience. Thank you.
Awesome, dude. All right, let's talk to you later, brother.